Hello, and welcome to F8. My name is Desiree, and I will be your MC today. I have the pleasure of introducing Alex. Alex is a huge soccer fan and has actually played 3 games coached by the Seattle Sounders MLS Cup winning head coach. Welcome, Alex.
Hi guys, thanks a lot. So my name is Alex Hopman. I'm an engineer in the games team based out of Seattle. I'm really happy to be the first, able to go first today. Although I suppose Mark and the keynote folks got to go actually first. But today we got a bunch to talk about. I want to talk about gaming community. Facebook is very invested in building community, and gaming is a great space for it. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what we're thinking in that area. I'm going to talk about our Games SDK, and we have a new Games SDK for PC that we're going to talk about and how you can use that with your games. And we have also a bunch of gaming-related features that we're launching related to our SDK and other APIs, and so we're going to talk about a bunch of those features and functionality that Facebook's doing to enable gaming scenarios. Let's get started talking a little bit about gaming community. Gaming has always been about community. From back in the old days when we were using 2400 baud modems to connect to MUDs and go online with a bunch of other people to go on adventures, to more recently, I'm a big World of Warcraft fan. I've been playing it for over a decade now. And that's a game where you go in this world with all these other people. And they're some of my real friends like Chris and Zach that I go on adventures with. But over the years, I've also met dozens and hundreds of other people. We form guilds together and go on adventures and defeat the big bosses in these raids and figure out strategies and things like that. When we think about this stuff, we think about how a lot of these gaming experiences can bring people closer together, and that by connecting Facebook and the games that people love, we can help emphasize that community. Facebook's mission is to build community and bring the world closer together. So that naturally ties to gaming for us, since it's such a great place for people to connect. So our goal in our team is to build the world's community for gamers. To be clear, we're not building games, we're not building a game engine, but games are one of those best ways to kind of bring people together and encourage those engaging conversations and friendships that can last through the years. One of the things we realized was we have a great opportunity to meet the gamers where they are. People play games all over the place, on mobile, on PCs, on consoles. We've even seen refrigerators now with computers in them or something, and so maybe you'll be able to play a game on your fridge someday. I don't know, but if there's any platform where people want to go play games, we want to kind of meet them there. And that helps connect all those different experiences. Most people actually play on more than one of those platforms. There's actually over 800 million people play games that are connected to Facebook in some way already. And one of the largest categories of ways that people play is on groups and other sort of things like that. They talk to each other about these games on Facebook. Out of the 800 million, the types of games they play span the whole spectrum, from FPS games and MOBAs to casino games and other casual sorts of things, across the whole spectrum. Fun indie games, high production value AAA games, these experiences are part of that world. And one of the key things for us is that we want to acknowledge that all of those types of people, whether they consider themselves a gamer or not, those people who are playing games can really benefit from the community it can create. Gaming groups are a really important thing. I'm part of a bunch of groups about some of my favorite games. And looking at the activity that's already going on at Facebook, what we saw was these groups are already cropping up all over the place, and there are tons of people talking about games on Facebook. That's the sort of thing that we use as really interesting information into our planning process, because it tells us that we can try to make those experiences better, more engaging, more connected to the games to really help people play them more. Over 190,000 groups are on Facebook that are specifically about gaming. We recently added the ability that you can target a group, be about gaming, and even about a specific game. Those groups have over 60 million active users. And again, they span the spectrum from large groups with over hundreds of thousands of people actively participating all the time, maybe the global Fortnite group or something like that, to small groups of 5 friends that are just chatting about their favorite experiences and sharing videos with each other, to then a bunch of stuff in between where you have the Pokemon Go users of San Jose or university-sponsored group about gaming. Unless you've been living under a rock, Facebook, you probably noticed Facebook's talking a lot about live video recently. And we're putting a lot of effort into being a great place for live gaming experiences. We support live game streaming and have also been recently doing a bunch of partnerships and big esports events. So for example, we have the Paladins Premier League and ESL1 are holding big events, some of them in giant arenas being streamed live on Facebook with lots of people kind of going and engaging with those events. And we find the connection that people make on these sort of things where they talk to each other about the events are exactly the sort of community building that we're all about. Creators are also a really important part of that whole effort, and so we have a big gaming creator program that's bringing creators like, this is Stone Mountain 64, who stream every day on Facebook, and they have their audience of fans and new people who discover them all the time, and people share in the exciting gaming experiences, and you know, these guys are really entertaining, so they make it really fun to watch this stuff. Obviously, the key thing is we want to connect all this stuff back to also the games, so they're not just statically happening on Facebook, and that's a lot of where the Games SDK comes in. We see it as that thing that helps connect the Facebook experiences and videos to the games and back. Which brings me to the virtuous cycle. Now, other than soccer, the other thing I really love is bicycling. And so to me, a little bit any bicycle is a virtuous cycle. I was trying to get a picture of a bunch of bicycles, and living in Seattle, I was looking for bike parades, and I found a lot of pictures for something called the Fremont Bike Parade, but I couldn't use any of those pictures here. If you're familiar with it, I'm sure San Francisco has some similar events. So instead, we've got our bike storage here in Facebook Seattle. It's got a bunch of bikes, and they're all virtuous cycles. I love them. But let's talk about how the cycle works for your game in Facebook. Again, the concept is here we've got the Facebook gaming, our gaming destination that gives people a place to go and find about all the content about your game on Facebook, and that then encourages people to go and play and engage with your game more. And then the game integrates through the SDK to make it really easy for people to share videos and experiences back to Facebook and complete that cycle and connection between the two. And this is how we think that you can also build up engagement, re-engagement, and get distribution because you can get the word out about your game. Let's get to the good stuff. I want to talk a little bit about the key features and functionality that we're providing to game developers. I'm going to talk about a bunch of different areas here as we get into the details, but first I want to cover at a high level, it's important to think about some of the different ways to integrate with our SDKs and APIs. We have an SDK with local libraries that exists on both PC and mobile, and that allows you to do client-side integrations where you build those APIs into your game. It's a great way to get Facebook login integrated and other capabilities. But we also have HTTP remote calls where you can go make calls to the Facebook web API and integrate with those things. And this is another important part about how you integrate your game with Facebook, both through the services provided client side there, and then either on the client or server side with those web APIs. One special thing to think about for gaming is there are a bunch of experiences where you really, if you want to have, and it all depends on your game and the value of things, but if it's possible for people to cheat in your game, it's important to have certain capabilities that are driven from the server side. A lot of games have a game engine that runs server side on their game servers, and those things can make those web API calls to connect to some of the features I'm going to talk about to integrate with your game from the server. And so depending on the specific situation, it's important to think about whether you want to integrate from the client or the server to make sure that everyone's being legit. I'm going to talk about some of the specific APIs next that we're introducing or have introduced in the past. We've of course got Facebook login, and I'll just touch on how that relates to games. Friend Finder. We have new live streaming support that we recently shipped in our PC SDK. And for the first time here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 360-degree streaming support that's also coming up really soon in our SDK. We have an in-stream rewards feature that allows you to have items that are rewards for people who are watching your videos. And finally, I'll talk about analytics. So first up, for PC, the key new thing we have is the PC SDK now supports login. Up until now, you could do login if you had your own web browser, and you can still do that, but we make it a lot easier now than it ever was before to just drop the SDK in your game. And I should say, the SDK on the PC, you can either use our straight C++ APIs, or we have wrappers for Unity. So if your game's built in Unity, you can very easily just drop that in, and the integration's a lot faster. Login is the key to enable all the other features, because with login, people give permission to connect their game to Facebook, and then enable all the other features, and you get an access token that you can use to follow up on other things. After login, the obvious thing to follow up on is Friend Finder. This is a great way for people to find their other friends that also play your game. It's important to understand that for this feature, both the person and their friends need to have used login and given your game permission to share that information. But once both have shared that information, people can go and connect up their friends and meet those people in-game. And that's a great way for people to play with their friends instead of just anonymous strangers out there. Blizzard, at their last BlizzCon, talked about how their Friend Finder integration was able to actually double the number of friends that everyone has on the Blizzard platform. So it can really be a big boost to those sort of connections. And those connections are the people that keep people playing your game for a long period of time instead of just abandoning it to move on to the next thing. I want to talk about live streaming. We mentioned all the programs we have for live streaming, including the creator program and esports. This has been a really big part about helping make games popular. We want to make it really easy. So the PC SDK, when you've dropped in support of the PC SDK, it's super easy to implement. You just go and put a button somewhere in your UI of your game or a key combination and call our API. And I'll show you in a second. We take care of all the rest of the UI about letting the person set up the stream. If your game's based on Unity, we'll automatically connect to your camera and do all the encoding and protocol stuff. If you're calling our API in C++, it's a little bit harder. You just have to, though, pass us the frame buffer every frame. So it's really not that much work. We take care of all the hard part. And then the player's live. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So this is going to be Crowfall from Artcraft Entertainment. They're one of our partners that have been integrating the PC SDK. And I've gone and invoked the live streaming. They're running here in Unity. And Facebook pops up the UI that lets me select where I want to stream to. In this case, I'm going to stream to a page I manage. And I'm going to select the Crowfall page that I want to stream to. And once I've selected that, it's going to give me a preview of my stream that it's sending and allow me to type in a description. So all that user interface is taken care of by our SDK provided for you. And so now the user's streaming and we're sitting there playing. Notice again that they're running in Unity with all the Unity editor around here. But then when we go watch the stream, it's actually just sending the game frames that are coming out. We're encoding them, and so now my friend is watching me play Crowfall. So we want to make that really easy so that every game can go and put that button in there, and your game players can then go and get the word out about your game. And we have this new gaming destination, which you can also check out at fb.gg, which is a great place to see all that video content organized by game in really convenient ways. So today, we're also really happy to announce that the SDK is going to add support for 360-degree live streaming. This is a feature that we've been showing in preview in various ways with panoramic photos and things like that on Facebook for a little bit. 360-degree media is a really cool, immersive way to let people kind of go join these experiences. And the key thing we're doing here is we're making it just as easy to integrate with your game as that other live streaming I was just talking about, which has a flat viewpoint. Again, especially for Unity games, you just drop it in and it can attach to the camera. Now, one thing to think about for 360-degree streaming is sometimes it's useful to, instead of having it attached to the normal player camera, to use a separate observer camera. If you think about it, if someone's watching a 360-degree stream, they want to control which way they're looking and how they interact with it. And so having it attached to the player that's running around in your game might be disorienting. So instead, an observer camera, which you can go and attach the viewpoint to, can be a much better way to present some of that content. Again, depending on your game. It all depends on the type of game. With all this video content, another really cool thing to go and boost your audience and your engagement in your game is in-stream rewards. Now, the concept here is that this helps drive video engagement by allowing people who are watching videos about your game to get rewards that are in-game things that then bring them back to your game. So it's very key to understand that for this feature, you control your economy. If you have an item economy in your game, it's really important for you to understand the value of those things and for you to be able to manage that. We don't control any of that stuff. Instead, you specify a list of items that are available to be given out to people, and a table of the rarity of those different items and how frequently they are available. So it really works best when you have some items that are common and other stuff that's really rare. Because what we see is when people are using this feature, when someone gets one of those rare items, they love talking about it in the chat. And so you create this much higher level of engagement of your viewer base in watching these streams. And we see when the stream is done, everyone then goes and connects back into the game. And so we see a big spike of people playing that game when the stream is done after to go pick up their rewards and all that sort of thing. So this is a great re-engagement and way to get your community to keep playing. It's also possible, now normally you might run this only on your own streams where you're controlling the frequency and it's randomized of when these items are made, given out to people. But you can also enable creators that you want to partner to. You can enable their page to have the in-stream rewards also. And so you again control all that. You can have a separate table of items that's for creators versus for special events and help those creators get the word out about your game. Let's show quickly what this looks like. So this is the Paladins Global Series, their esports, one of their 2 esports leagues. And I'm playing here, and it pops up the little dialogue in the bottom right. It shows custom graphic. You get to have whatever sort of, if it's a chest or a pile of gold or whatever. And then the user watching has to claim the item. I want to be really clear here. Part of the goal here is not for a bunch of people to be farming items by just running videos that they're not watching. They have to actually be watching the video and engaged with it to go and pick up and claim those items. And then when they go in-game later, you can use our web API to understand what items they've got. So we again see that spike of people going and playing the game afterwards to go get their items. I want to talk a little bit about analytics too, because this is a really important part of the Facebook Games platform. Everyone who builds games knows that understanding who plays your game and how they play it is really important to building a successful and fun and engaging game. Analytics allows you to call app events, and so from your game you can give us either standard app events like when people start playing or gain a level or a monetization event. And then Facebook will show in anonymous and aggregate ways that information. So we only show large groups of people and it's completely anonymous, but you can still understand some of the demographics and patterns of how people play. So for example, this data is just from we have a sample data set for analytics that people can use to go and check out the capabilities. But you can see the number of active users of your game and track it over time and understand as you run special events how that helps increase engagement. You can also go and drill down into things like age and gender or other demographic information, what countries people are playing your game from, and understand how those patterns change over time. And of course, it's important to be able to track revenue and be able to understand how all those things relate to the revenue side of your game. If there's one thing that you remember coming away from today, I hope you remember this URL. We try to make it really easy. So we've got this new destination site for gaming video at fb.gg. But if you type fb.gg/SDK, you get to our developer website that'll have all the information on how you can sign up for the SDK and documentation about all these things and all those sorts of capabilities. So I want to thank you for coming out here today. Please make sure you do the survey and send feedback. We really appreciate all the speakers that have been working really hard to prepare this. Would love to get your feedback on what was interesting and useful. And I hope you have a great F8. I don't have time for questions, but I'll be out in the hallway afterwards. And so thank you very much.